Hey everyone, welcome to Dr. Frank's Finance World. I am Dr. Frank the Bank, where I teach you a little something about finance so you can make some money in the future. This is Problems. It's part 2 of the weighted average cost of capital, and we're going to go over a few of them tonight just to have a better comfort level with how the math of this works. So if you remember, the cost of preferred is the dividend over the price. And in this case, it says that for Noble Donuts here, had a $3.50 dividend. It was a $50 stock price. When you take $3.50 and divide it by 50, you get 0.07. So it's pretty easy to see that the cost of preferred was 7%. Now here they were looking at a cost of equity, and they were using the constant growth model equation, which of course is the dividend at time 1 over the price at time 0 plus the growth rate. We had the dividend at time 0, so we had to grow that, and when we multiplied that by the 5% growth rate it had, the 150 times 1.05, you had $1.57.5. You divide that by the $40, which they said was the current price, and you add that to the 5%, and you end up with 8.94% equity. Run that through your calculator. It's pretty straightforward. So the next one on Noble is looking at the cost of debt. The firm has a debt issue, 7 years outstanding maturity, quoted at 86% of face value, so the price was $860. The issue makes semi-annual, so you had to adjust the N, the I, and the payment. So semi-annual for 7 years means there's 14 semi-annual payments. We use the $860 current price, and it paid a 3.5% dividend, cut in half because it's twice a year. So you put that in as $17.50 with a future value of $1,000, and you end up getting a I. Let's do that. We'll just pull it up here. That'd be simple enough. Actually, we got to go up here and open up the calculator again. So it's not simple enough. There you go. But at any rate, when we go do that, we see, let's put it in the calculator. We'll bring it up here. So I'm going to clear it first. And we know that the N now is 14, so we'll do 14 for the N. We know that the present value is 860 negative because we had to pay something for that bond, right? The payment is the $35 once a year, but it's twice a year, so it's actually $17.50 is what you would get for the payment. And it had a future value of $1,000. So when you put that in and you compute the I, you actually get 2.998. But that also is twice a year, not just once. So when you multiply that by 2, you end up getting 5.9768, or essentially 5.98%. The next one, we're looking at the pre-tax cost of debt is 5.98, which we just calculated. We want to know what the after-tax cost is. Well, they're in the 35% tax bracket. So when we take the 5.98 and multiply it by 1 minus t, that's what we're doing here. 1 minus the 0.35, you have 0.65. And when you take 0.65% and multiply by 5.98, you have a component cost of debt of 3.89%. So the last thing is we have to look at what the total weight was in each of these. And it says there were 500,000 shares at $40 a share, or $20 million was stock. It had 10,000 bonds at that 860 par value, which was 8.6 million. And it also had 20,000 shares of preferred stock trading at $50, which was another million. So the overall amount of money that was raised was 29.6 million. Now, if we simply divide each of these, the equity and the debt and the preferred, by the 29.6, we will get the weight. And we did that just the one time here, but basically when we did that for the equity, we took the 20 million divided by 29.6. We got a weighting in the equity of 67.57%. And we're going to do it the other two, 8.6 million divided by 29.6 and 1 million divided by 29.6 to get the weighting in both the debt and preferred. So putting it all together, we have the weight of the debt times the cost, the yield to maturity minus 1 minus the tax, the weight of the preferred times the cost, and the weight of the equity times the cost. So we figured out the weight of the equity is 0.6757, and the cost we figured out a couple slides back was 8.94%. If you took the 1 million divided by 29.6, about 3% of the money was in preferred at a 7% cost, and 29.05% was in at that net cost of debt of 3.89%. When you multiply these across and you add them up, you have an overall cost of debt, or weighted average cost of capital, of 7.39%. So we put it all together in one problem for you. Now, when you're looking at just a couple of quick ones, just shots out there, students and people tend to have more trouble with the cost of debt because of the tax ramifications. They get to write it off. So here we took the 9% cost of debt, was pre-tax, and of course we got our tax savings on it. So the 1 minus t was 1 minus 0.3 or 0.7. And when you took the 9% times 0.7, the cost of debt in this case is 6.3%. And then one last look at what it looks like to do a CAPM problem. Here they said treasury bills, which is risk-free essentially, is 3.5%, and that the beta was 1.5. Instead of giving you the market risk premium, they simply told you the return of the market. So we had to do the CAPM calculation inside parentheses, which is the return of the market minus the risk-free. So in this case, the market risk premium is actually 6.5%. We multiply that by a beta of 1.5, this cost right here becomes 9.75%. When we add our risk-free to it, we get a total cost of equity of 13.25, which in this case was answer B. One last time to put it all together, they're giving you a problem here with the tax brackets 40%. Your debt pre-tax is 6%. Your cost of preferred was 10%, the cost of that case of P, and the cost of equity case of B was 13. So these are your total assets, and you have to calculate your weights. 1 million of the 2 million was in debt, so that's 50% was in the form of debt. 100,000 of the 2 million, or 5%, was in preferred stock, and 900,000, the remaining 900,000, was in equity divided by the 2.5 was 45%. So now we have our weightings for our debt, preferred, and equity, and we have to match them up with our costs. So we knew when we did this calculation, the 6% up here times 1 minus the 40% tax rate, we found that our cost of debt was 3.6%. So we take 50% times that 3.6, and it gives a component value of 1.8. And then the 5% times 10% gives us 0.5%. And finally, the 45% that was in equity times the 13% gives us a component cost of 5.85. When we add them all together, we come up with an 8.15% WACC, which is answer C. So this is probably how test questions are going to look more likely. But at any rate, thanks for listening. Don't forget to send emails and comments with suggestions to Ask Dr. Frank. Have a great day. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.